Yuuki Kagurazaka is a genius. He had decided to tackle this unfair world head-on. But even for a genius, some mistakes are fatal.
No, we were right to run. If we got involved, I don't think any of us would have come out unscathed.
He escaped the chaos of the cathedral, only to find a far greater threat blocking his path. If you're enjoying this deep dive into the story, please consider subscribing. It's a free way to help support the rendering and editing costs that keep this project moving. Thanks for being here. Now, the confrontation begins. Yuuki Kagurazaka is a genius. Even back in his original world, Yuuki had a special power. A sort of supernatural observational force, one you could call psychokinesis. He was born with this power, but he never felt any urgent need to do something with it. After all, he knew that if he told someone about this power of his, he would be made into a spectacle. Life was thus rather humdrum for him, but he enjoyed it well enough. His parents were kind to him and he had a decent number of friends. He never found it hard to scare up some money when needed, so he had access to basically anything he wanted. He had absolutely no complaints. But one day Yuuki was befallen by sudden misfortune. Right when he entered middle school, his parents passed away in an accident. It was not their fault. Their car was hit head-on by a truck driver who fell asleep behind the wheel, and they died instantly. Only Yuuki, sleeping in the back seat, survived. He thought it was unfair, of course. He hated the driver who caused the accident, but there was nothing he could do about it. Japan was a nation of laws and regulations, and personal revenge was not part of that picture. The ensuing court case revealed a number of things. The transportation company the truck driver worked for had bitten off more than it could chew. They put the brunt of that on their field employees who toiled on even though they knew they were overworked. The driver, too, was a victim here. So was it the transportation company's fault? Well, the facts did not paint a clear picture there either. If they turned down a job from a big firm, they might not have gotten another order from them again. It was not easy to say no to a long-time client. The transportation company should have responded by improving their business structure, but skilled drivers were tough to come by, and they did not have the financial wherewithal to bring on and train younger talent. That was so messed up, Yuuki lamented. The world was just so unfair, and he was just so powerless. Who should he hate for it? To be honest, society itself had serious problems. Yuuki considered exacting his revenge on society, but that was beyond his own capabilities. As a genius, he thus knew his own limits. The world had advanced to completion in essence. Supernatural powers or not, having a little strength on your side did not mean you could change anything by yourself. You were not going to beat an army, and even if you could, there was no future awaiting you past that. Yuuki thought about giving in to despair, destroying all of society and rebuilding it from scratch. But that would cause nothing but misery for vast numbers of people, and he just could not commit to that. If Yuuki wanted to change society, the only way was to pound the pavement and attract more people who shared his beliefs. He could then become a politician and improve his nation in his own image. That was the only plan Yuuki came up with. A long, patient path. One that was possible if he really put his mind to it, but it would only bear fruit decades into the future. Yuuki was at an impasse, and before he made his decision, he wound up traveling between worlds. But whether this was a stroke of fortune or misfortune for him was another question entirely. It was the sheer malice of the demon lord Kazalim that brought Yuuki to this world. Kazalim had lost his physical body, retaining possession of just his spiritual one, but he still had not lost his powers as the Curse Lord. He was biding his time, making the necessary preparations to resurrect himself, and he would execute his plan only when he summoned a body suitable for his spirit. Of course, he carefully examined the constraints he had put on this summoned target. Failure was absolutely out of the question for this ritual, so he would use his powers of domination to carve a cursed seal before the summoning. The summoned target's heart and mind would be crushed, completely unaware of what happened. Kazalim would then seize the power within their soul, snatching away the body and resurrecting himself. Kazalim's sole mistake was summoning Yuuki for this ritual. None of the curse-driven magic the Demon Lord tried on him worked. With his genius-level talents, Yuuki quickly surmised how this world operated. In the midst of the journey, he obtained all the powers he wanted, the powers to change the world. It was pure, unadulterated energy, a power from the soul that he could alter to his liking. The name of it, the unique skill Initiator. He had told Rimuru that he lacked any special skills, but that was a bald-faced lie. The first thing he initiated with this power was Anti-Skill, the ability to cancel out anything hostile coming his way. That immediately foiled Kazalim's scheme. Not only was Kazalim defeated, but he even had to capitulate to Yuuki. Now Yuuki found meaning to life in this world. Here, it was eat or be eaten. The laws governing civilization were still incomplete, and it would be a while until they even approached perfection. Therefore, it was left to him to become this world's leader and guide it in the right direction. Yuuki had decided to tackle this unfair world head-on. It was a challenge that drove him forward. This world was his for the taking. Yuuki had escaped the chaotic scene at the cathedral with his 3 servants, Laplace, Footman, and Tyr. The group promptly tried to flee the Holy Empire of Lubelius. They considered staying nearby and gauging the situation, but ultimately decided that remaining there was too dangerous. The berserk hero Kronoa was not the kind of pushover Yuuki could control. She was a fearsome figure, one who saw any living, breathing being in sight as her enemy. Granville must have known that when he offered to fight alongside Yuuki. He hated to admit it, but this time his enemy had the upper hand. Laplace lamented, "What a travesty though, eh? We finally gave the Demon Lord Luminous the slip. We were one step away from nabbing a hero, the greatest weapon anyone could hope for, and now look," Footman chortled. "Ace." "Her strength was nothing I've seen in this dimension. It is a pity we couldn't bring her to our side, but against her everybody there would have been killed, no?" That was the logical conclusion, but Yuuki was not sure things would go that easily. Laplace replied, "Ace. Yeah, who knows? 'Cause in the end, the Demon Lord Rimuru's a freak of nature, huh? And Luminous and Leon were on site too, so we're talking 3 Demon Lords and a small army of decent magic born. No matter who won, it sure wouldn't surprise me." Tyr added, "Precisely. Granville is a former hero himself, so he's quite strong too. I can't even fathom who would come out on top." Laplace and Tyr were not as optimistic as Footman. Like Yuuki, they were also contemplating a possible victory for Rimuru's side. Certainly, for Yuki's purposes, Kronoa annihilating everybody on the scene would be the best way to end the day. That would rub out Rimuru, a tremendous nuisance, Granville a pain in the ass, Luminous a likely future threat to him, and even Leon the nemesis of Laplace and his cohorts. With all of them gone, the West was as good as under Yuki's control. And while Kronoa would still be a handful, she was not that scary to him if she lacked any sentience. For all he cared, they could just bait her with some monsters and banish her to the other side of the desert or something. If an adversary was all strength and nothing else, Yuuki would not even see it as a threat. That was why he hoped at least to find out who survived, but...
No, we were right to run. If we got involved, I don't think any of us would have come out unscathed. And besides...
His instincts told him something bad was about to happen. They needed to figure out their position in this free-for-all, if only so they could form a strategy, but Yuuki trusted his instincts and chose to flee anyway. If Kronoa was defeated, the surviving Demon Lords would no doubt be openly hostile to him. Rimuru had probably noticed Yuki's betrayal by this point. He could not talk his way out of that any longer. With this defeat, they had lost their base of operations, their position, and everything else in the West. And all, Yuuki thought. Because he was foolish enough to fall for Granville's offers. He was thus willing to accept this result as his just deserts. That was why, when it was time to flee, he did not hesitate for a moment. This firm decision-making acumen was one of his greatest assets, and it had seen him through some difficult spots time and time again. Yuuki assumed this would be another one of those times. But he soon came to realize how sorely mistaken he was. Suddenly, as Yuki's group quickly traversed the landscape, a single man stood before them, blocking their path. Next to him was a blue-haired girl whose beauty immediately drew your attention, wearing a dark red maid outfit that looked extremely out of place. Yuuki froze, sensing the danger. Laplace demanded, "Who are you?" The man ignored Laplace's question, his eyes transfixed on Yuuki. Nobody else mattered to him. Footman took a step forward. "If you mean to get in our way..." The next moment, he was sent crashing to the ground by a new figure. Another girl, wearing the same dark red maid outfit as the blue-haired one. This girl's hair was green. She was none other than Maziri, who had been on assignment in Inglesia until a few moments ago. The appearance of Testarossa put an end to that mission, and so she flew over. And with Maziri here, the blue-haired figure must have been Rain. The two of them served only one man, the Demon Lord Guy Crimson, Lord of Darkness and the most powerful being in the world. His rouge hair, darker than blood, fluttered in the breeze, his crimson eyes twinkling like gems as he beheld Yuuki. Guy spoke at last.
Hey, the first time we've met, I think. You've been attracting my interest.
Guy's gaze was frozen upon Yuuki. No one else was permitted to enter his sight. Yuuki, detecting this, was not sure whether to feel happy or sad about that. Given the way Maziri just dispatched footmen, he had a decent idea of his foe's powers. And not just that, the colors of their hair and the unusual maid uniforms matched those of a curious group Kagali, Kazalim, and Clayman had all told him about. This man before him stood at the very peak of the world, a peak he wanted for himself. If he had the ambition to conquer the world, Yuuki would have to face him sooner or later.
So you're Guy Crimson, hailed as the most powerful of the Demon Lords. It's an honor to meet you. My name is Yuuki Kagurazaka. To think that you'd come to me, did you want to join forces?
Yuuki grinned at Guy, never letting himself be overpowered. This was, he knew, very wishful thinking. One of Guy's maids had just knocked footmen to the ground. There was no way they came here to extend an olive branch. He knew that, but he still put up a friendly facade. That was how he negotiated, making an outrageous statement or proposal, engaging the other side's circumstances and goals from their reaction.
You're funny. That's quite an attitude to take in front of me. And maybe that wouldn't be such a bad offer. But it looks like you and Leon are enemies, eh? And besides, aren't you traveling to the east now? Because personally, I ain't a fan of Ludora gaining any more war power.
Negotiations were off the table. Yuuki did not expect Guy would take the offer from the start. It did not faze him. He was too busy scrutinizing whatever information he could glean from Guy's words. Ludora was the emperor of the Nazca Namrium Omeria United Eastern Empire. Guy's name-dropping him meant the two had a relationship, and most likely not a friendly one. Yuuki thought, so they want to eliminate us before we can reach the east? I really don't want to tangle with the strongest demon lord here, but if this is what it's come to, so be it. There was no avoiding a battle with Guy. Escape was futile. Silly little tricks were meaningless in this situation. Going after Guy with everything they had, Yuuki decided, offered them better chances.
Well, alright. If you're opposed to us, that serves me just fine as well. This way I can test out the powers of the strongest of demon lords before I come to the east.
Yuuki meant to antagonize Guy. At the same time, a great excitement welled within his heart until it spilled out and coursed through his entire body. Right then, at that moment, he had decided to take the powers he had bottled up and unleash them all against the strongest demon lord. Defeat, he thought as he sized Guy up, was not even imaginable to him. Yuuki was certainly confident. In fact, in a one-on-one match, he was sure he could beat anyone. He could tell Cronoa was a pretty dangerous foe, but nothing more. With a concerted effort, he could win, if only after a struggle. But they were sharing a venue with multiple demon lords who were clearly not on his side. Leon, Luminous, even the incredibly soft-hearted Rimuru had likely noticed Yuuki's true intentions. Rimuru had realized some time ago that Yuuki was his enemy, but that actually benefited Yuuki back at the cathedral. Had he tried using Rimuru to his advantage, Yuuki would have fallen into a trap. Yuuki did not know that at the time, but either way he had the right idea about Rimuru now. Yet with all his confidence, not even Yuuki was stupidly bold enough to take on 3 demon lords and Cronoa simultaneously. He did not need his instincts to tell him that retreating was the best option. Now though, this was different. The man standing in front of him was all the warning he needed. Once he realized that, Yuuki resolved to handle matters with everything he had. Guy flashed a bemused smile.
Oh, you think you can beat me?
Well, kind of. I was planning to knock you out sooner or later anyway, so this is just accelerating the timetable a bit.
Yuuki's attitude quickly stoked the murderous ire of Rain and Maziri, but they would never open their mouths without their master Guy's permission. The Demon Lord was the absolute ruler, and any concern for his safety was therefore a sign of disrespect. Guy was a capricious Demon Lord, merciless to anyone he deemed not worth his time. Rain and Maziri just barely earned that acceptance for themselves, but get on his bad side and they would be killed in an instant, no doubt. That was the clear difference in power between Guy and his maids. Laplace could not move. He was like a frog transfixed by a venomous snake. If he tried to assist Footman, Rain would certainly retaliate. It was 4 against 3, numerically speaking, but the yawning gap in strength was extremely cold comfort to him. He might be able to take on Rain and Maziri alone, but with Guy around, he did not stand a chance. Yuuki seemed ready to take on Guy, but Laplace saw that as a foolhardy challenge. Laplace thought, forget it. Anyone but this dude. Cronoa was on another dimension herself, but this Guy Crimson's a cross-my-heart monster, I tell ya. This ain't even gonna be a fight. We can't run, and who knows how long the boss can hold out. I suppose that's gonna be the key to survival here. Laplace deserved praise for identifying even a small slice of Guy's potential force. But beyond that, his strength of heart, the ability to consider fleeing instead of collapsing to the ground heartbroken, demonstrated his true worth. He knew about Yuki's strength, but Yuki was hiding exactly how much he had from them. Would it even work against Guy? Still, even if Yuki was no match for Guy, Laplace intended to rescue Footman, take Tira, and get out of there. Yuki would no doubt pick up on this and give him a hand. That was how much Laplace trusted him. The only problem with this plan was that Rain and Maziri were abnormally strong menaces themselves. They were not careless enough to give Laplace an opening to save Footman. He hesitated to make any untoward moves against them. He wanted to find a way to rescue his friend. But the problem, it turned out, had a ready solution.
Hey, let him go.
The order came from Guy to Maziri, who of course offered no resistance, immediately releasing Footman. Laplace was almost beginning to feel optimistic. Well, that was easy, he thought. Now I guess we got an escape route after all. Then things took a different turn.
Don't worry. If you beat me, I'll let you all go unhurt.
Guy seemed to be contradicting himself. What did defeating him have to do with letting Yuki's group leave? It was hardly reassuring at all. Thus, distressed and depressed, Laplace decided to just watch the proceedings, praying for Yuki to win. Yuki was the first to act. His supreme confidence, driven by the firm belief that no magic or skills worked on him, led him to unleash a kick on Guy. It was a sharp, heavy kick that seemed to shift halfway, its trajectory veering in midair before finally landing hard on Guy's head. But it was Yuki's face that wound up wincing.
Eesh, you're so solid.
His anti-skill worked against all things, penetrating the defenses of any foe. But despite being directly attacked, Guy stood there, totally serene and not demonstrating an ounce of pain. There was no trick or trap involved. It was just that Guy's body was more solid than Diamond itself, and the mix of toughness and flexibility was a truly ominous threat. That was just how Guy was.
That barely triggered an itch. Some battle this is. Humor me a little more, would you? 'Cause otherwise I'm killing all of you.
With a smile, Guy conjured flames in his right hand. It was the elemental magic Napalm burst, a searing fire reminiscent of a dragon's long, twisting form. At a temperature of several thousand degrees, it could instantly vaporize any human being. And now those draconic flames were wrapping around Yuki's body.
You're wasting your time with magic.
Yuki shouted, trying to throw the self-satisfied Guy off guard, then leaped away, a chill running down his spine.
You got some good instincts, don't you?
Guy smiled as he asked the question, but Yuki was too busy rolling on the ground to answer, frantically trying to put out the flames. Anti-skill did work, and it did prevent Guy's spell from injuring him, but the magic fire, which should have immediately extinguished itself, simply kept on burning. Even worse, it consumed oxygen just like a normal fire. Left unattended, it would have starved Yuki's lungs of air and killed him. What felt like ages to Yuki was just a few seconds. That was why he took no damage, but if Yuki failed to notice and kept attacking Guy, that would have sealed his fate. He had instead focused on putting out the fire, as ridiculous as it made him look. Then, gauging Guy's reaction, Yuuki considered one possibility he sincerely did not want to believe in. He hated to admit it, but he needed to check how feasible it was. So standing back up, Yuuki asked the question, not really expecting an answer.
Why didn't you follow up and attack me again? This isn't some kind of chivalrous duel.
Quit playing dumb. You must have realized by now, right? I've picked up on the secret to your powers.
Yuuki heard that and went cold. I knew it, he thought, disgusted. His anti-skill was omnipotent, capable of annulling all forces. But when faced with the sort of arts that fused magic together with skills, he could not cancel both at once. That was the only flaw to his skill and therefore his sole weakness. Plus, no matter how much he could power himself up, Yuuki was still just a human being. Perhaps he could generate antibodies to dispatch any poison attacks, but he could not go for very long without oxygen. This weakness, one created simply by being a living creature, made Yuuki comprehend the extent of his disadvantage. Guy stood there, composed.
See, there's this man I know who can cancel all forms of magic. But if we ever fought, I'd still win. Why? Because he can't cancel out anything besides magic. And as far as I know, there's no way to perfectly block the laws of physics in this world. Put all your focus on one point and you'll open up a hole somewhere else. It seems like your ability applies to skills as well as magic, but...
He looked down upon Yuuki, airing his thoughts instead of landing another strike. The detached, casual air was all carefully calculated. It would be easy to kill Yuuki after all, but that would not be any fun. Instead, Guy wanted to break his heart and force him to admit defeat in his despair. He already had him worked out. Yuuki's attack told him all about what made him unique, and Guy had come up with countermeasures. No matter how well he could dispel magic and skills, he was human, and thus eminently beatable. Humans were weak, sporting frail bodies laden with vulnerable points, and it was not even worth formulating a strategy for killing them. Even in terms of core physical ability, there was a wide gap between Yuuki and the Demon Lord. With Yuuki's kick earlier, Guy left only a single small barrier in place as he tried blocking it, but it did not even leave a scratch. Look at their respective magicule energies, and it was comical to compare them at all. Guy was on the level of a true dragon, and for him it would be simple to launch another magic spell while Yuuki was busy dispelling the first.
But just killing you on the spot would defeat the whole purpose of me showing up. Why don't you try entertaining me while I'm here?
Guy lorded over Yuuki and taunted him. He wanted to corner Yuuki, make him unleash his full powers, and only then would he utterly overwhelm him and claim victory. Yuuki, meanwhile, could tell what Guy was thinking, painfully so. But he had no response. The breezy confidence vanished from his face as he coolly analyzed the situation and pondered a way to make it out alive. He was a rare genius, and his genius-level brain told him that the difference in strength was cataclysmic. But he did not give up, instead mentally groping for any and all alternatives. The only hope he found was that Guy took him so lightly. Yuuki thought, yeah, with this much of a difference I can see why he'd look down on me. But he's also just a tad bit arrogant. Yuuki still had some tricks up his sleeve. One was the supernatural ability he was born with. Another was Avarice, the skill he took from Maribel. The third was Instigator, capable of creating skills on the fly as needed. With those, he thought, he could make it through. Not killing me when you had the chance was a real bad idea, Yuuki thought. Gathering his breath, Yuuki turned back toward Guy.
Well, just because you've spotted a few of my abilities doesn't mean you're safe to order me around yet.
This was not sour grapes. He really believed this. If an opponent became riled up and lost their cool, that made them more likely to commit an error. That was the aim behind his taunting. But as he verbally parried with Guy, he also ran his powers up and down his own body, powers he usually kept bottled up. His spiritual force flowed, focusing itself around his soul, and he was using it to enhance his physical body from human to enlightened, and from enlightened to saint. It was an evolution, one that lifted him even higher than Hinata, and when it was done, Yuuki stopped breathing. A full saint was equivalent to a spiritual life form. Hinata was still too much a prisoner of her own physical body, but Yuuki was already a level above her. Respiration was no longer required. Having disposed of his human weaknesses, Yuuki was now striking a much stronger presence. If you converted his energy stores to magicules, they were now closer to Leon's or Luminous's. But Guy was not moved. In a wholly non-agitated tone, he said,
What a disappointment. Is that your full power? Then we could duke it out 1,000,000 times and you'd still never beat me.
Yep. And in that case, let's have some fun.
With Yuki's signal, the battle began anew. And then Yuki found out exactly why Guy was considered the strongest being. Nothing but despair ruled over the landscape. Yuki was now sprawled on the ground. Before Guy's overwhelming power, absolutely none of his attacks struck for damage. No petty tricks would work on him. Even Yuki's greatest attacks, moves he spent untold hours honing, failed to land a scratch upon Guy.
God damn it.
Yuki lacked the strength to so much as stand up. Turning toward Guy and cursing him was about the best he could manage. But his heart was still unbroken, something he deserved high praise for. Laplace had burned the battle into his memory, never blinking once. Laplace thought, it makes no sense to me. It ain't that the boss is a wimp, it's that Guy's just too much. Yuki was indeed stronger than Laplace imagined. He had some kind of eerie supernatural force, and he used it to test out a variety of approaches with Guy. From simple throwing stones to fiery blasts, heavy pressure, and spiritual interference, all were lightly shrugged off. Even with over 30 times the muscle of an average human, even with attacks lobbed at hundreds of miles an hour, it was just child's play to Guy. Not even Anti-Skill, the keystone of Yuki's defense, could fully disable Guy's magic.
That's not gonna work on me any longer, you know.
As he warned, Guy had apparently found a way through Anti-Skill. It was a shocking revelation for Yuki. Kazalim and Clayman had taught him much about the 10 great demon lords, including the fact that Guy and Milim boasted another echelon of power. But not even these advisors could have known just how much of a gap there really was. If they had, they never would have endorsed his world conquest fantasies. Laplace realized it well after the fact. So this, he thought, is what a catastrophe-level Guy is like? There were things in this world that must never be prodded. Even Laplace had some powers he kept secret from his own friends, but they were meaningless before an opponent like Guy. That showed how overwhelming a foe he was. No tactic imaginable could bring this demon lord to his knees. Even Yuki, a man clearly more powerful than Laplace, was helplessly toppled as if he were an infant. At this point, escaping alive was next to impossible. Someone, Laplace concluded, would need to make the ultimate sacrifice. But he kept up his usual calm demeanor as he took a step toward Guy. Laplace said, Yep, I'd expect nothing less from the great demon lord Guy Crimson. We're the Moderate Jesters, you see, kind of a jack-of-all-trades outfit. And our boss, Mr. Yuki here, hired us for some assorted odd jobs. So now that he's been defeated, we're not really under any obligation to continue serving him. Yuki stared in shock. Tears started to cry out. Laplace, what are you? It was incredibly petty, but Laplace seemed ready to betray his friend at that moment. He did not know Guy personally, but the Demon Lord's selfishness and arrogance were the stuff of legend. He had no interest in the weak and refused to so much as talk to anyone he did not consider worth his time. Taking this attitude toward Guy all but ensured Laplace's instant death. But it was also guaranteed to turn Guy's attention toward him, and Yuki could doubtlessly use that opening to make good his escape. It was a chance Laplace was willing to bet on. The one absolute rule among the Moderate Jesters was to never betray your friends, and especially not your client. That was why Laplace believed Yuki would immediately understand his intentions. Footman had a temper and tended to act before thinking, but his friends were always on his mind. Tira, meanwhile, was stronger than Clayman, but so timid that she shied away from exercising her full force. Both of them had a tendency to get carried away, but they could be trusted to take care of Yuki. Thus, Laplace decided to sacrifice himself. Laplace pressed on. I just want to help you, Mr. Guy, sir, so could you at least spare my life? He could not have announced his betrayal more clearly. Footman and Tira acted confused. Guy showed Laplace a bemused grin. Laplace thought, all right, gotta keep angering him. Laplace had no intention of dying. He knew he did not have much hope against Guy, but maybe there was a way to get out of this alive. Thus he did not hesitate to speak once more. But before he could, Yuuki staggered to his feet and spoke.
No need to force it, Laplace. Oh man, do I really look that helpless to you?
For a moment, no one answered. Yuuki was prepared to die. But at the same time, he could feel insatiable resentment filling his heart. He was disappointed in himself, and it riled him, and Laplace's words only deepened his anger. No way Laplace would ever betray him. This was all an act, he correctly surmised. A performance made because he trusted in Yuuki, despite his cavalcade of blunders. That made him as happy as it did sorrowful. If I had even more power, Yuuki thought. The thought bubbled up from within his heart of hearts. It was a desire nobody could ever answer, but something deep inside him reacted. A clear voice echoed inside him. You want power? Then take my hand. Yuuki faltered for a moment. Huh? He wondered if his mind was playing tricks on him, but the voice was far too clear and distinct for that. The voice continued, let me take over, and you'll score the most powerful force imaginable. Even world conquest would be easy as pie, I think, if you took my hand. Now make your choice. The voice's offer made Yuuki extremely uncomfortable. Yuuki answered inwardly, shut up. I'm me, all right? You're not my friend, and I'm not cheap enough to achieve my goals with the help of someone I don't even know. He could not have been clearer. Yes, to him, an ambition this big only gained meaning because he would fulfill it himself. It was a stance Yuuki refused to budge on. The voice fell silent, apparently unsure what to say, and to Yuuki, if the voice was gone, it no longer mattered to him. Desperate though this moment was, something else weighed on Yuuki's mind. Guy, it seemed, had some kind of purpose for him. That might have just been because he wanted to enjoy this battle with Yuuki, but there had to be some other reason. He did say he was not a fan of Ludora gaining any more war power. But turn that around, and if Yuuki did not side with Ludora, let alone the Eastern Empire, then perhaps there would be no reason to kill him and his friends. And as for why Guy did not kill Yuuki right then, Yuuki thought, eesh, I couldn't overpower him at all. But from here on out, it'll be a battle of wits, won't it? And rather than forcing such an awful role upon Laplace, I've got a much better chance if I do this myself. Yuuki roused his spirits and got back to his feet. For another breath, the battlefield held its silence. Brushing his bangs out of his face, Yuuki smiled defiantly in spite of the desperate situation.
Yeah, I never thought you'd be that powerful. But now that I fought you, I'm sure of it. You don't want to kill us at all, do you?
What makes you think that?
Well, I mean, if you really wanted to, you could have massacred us a long time ago. So why did you keep beating me within an inch of my life but no further?
Yuuki could not have sounded more confident with the question. Anyone would think it an incredibly reckless thing to do, facing an opponent like Guy who had just demonstrated such impenetrable might. But Guy still seemed entertained.
Oh, you noticed? Well, you don't need to know why.
Yuuki shrugged at this denial, but he expected as much, so he calmly moved on to step 2.
Okay, I got an offer for you then.
An offer?
Yeah, if you let us go, I think we can help you out a little.
Help me out?
Right. I guess you don't want us cooperating with the Eastern Empire, but I'd like you to reconsider that.
Go on.
What I mean is, if we're trying to conquer the world here, then sooner or later we're gonna have to fight the Eastern Empire. And I just spent the past however many minutes learning how strong you are. I can feel it in my bones. I think it goes without saying that I don't plan to challenge you for a while to come, okay? So it'd be more natural for me to head over to the Empire and take it down first, right?
This was coming completely out of left field. It left Footman and Tyr in the dust, certainly, and Laplace simply stood there as well, helplessly confused. He had just hatched a plan, was all but ready to die for it, and Yuuki, his one lifeline, had stomped all over it. Now, he thought, it was solely up to Yuuki's negotiations. The ball was in his court, but his fearless attitude gave Laplace an unstoppable cold sweat down his spine. Laplace thought, it's crazy. The premise is just crazy, so why is Guy enjoying this? Laplace was right. Something about Yuuki's offer made Guy grin ominously.
Are you still trying to challenge me?
Of course. I'm looking to conquer the world, remember? And I can't win against you right now, but I'm gonna surpass you someday, you'll see.
As roughed up as he was, barely able to keep himself upright, Yuuki remained defiant. He maintained his bold stance, as if the thought of being killed for his insolence had never occurred to him. Against someone like Guy, this was absolutely the correct tack to take. If you foolishly tried begging for your life, he would immediately lose interest, and all that awaited you next was destruction. He may not have realized it, but Yuuki had made the best choice possible.
And if you four topple the Empire, would that benefit me in some way?
Yuuki braced himself. They were at the crux of this discussion. He returned Guy's piercing gaze and nodded emphatically.
That's right. I don't know why yet, but you don't want the Empire to conquer the West either. Am I wrong?
Guy gave no immediate answer. Guy and the Emperor Ludora had some history, that much was certain. It all came down to this. Yuuki pleaded his case, mixing in a bluff or two.
And I've got a lot of enemies to defeat, you know. Yes, I want to lend a hand to the Empire for now, but I'm not going to affiliate myself with it. I'll eat away at it from the inside, and I'll use it for my own goals.
I see. So if the Empire shares a goal with you, you'll help. But beyond that, there's no telling what will happen. And you're thinking about borrowing the Empire's forces to take down Leon and Rimuru, aren't you, you bastard?
Guy sharpened his eyes upon Yuuki, seeming to see through everything. There was no taking back what Yuuki said. Guy and Leon's relationship was a mystery to him, and there was no way he would know what Guy thought of Rimuru either. He could not know how his words would be construed, but still, Yuuki made no effort to hide his ambitions.
That's right. I'll conquer them all, and then I'll beat you last, Demon Lord Guy Crimson.
He deliberately made himself sound as brazen as possible. The rest was up to Guy's judgment. Yuuki silently apologized to his comrades. Following Laplace's lead would have gotten us killed anyway, he thought. Sorry, man, but you're gonna have to play my game instead. It was all or nothing, and Yuuki was nothing if not greedy. He was making a dangerous bet. If he was going to survive, he wanted everyone else to as well. But the bet paid off.
The Moderate Jesters, you said? Your ambitions certainly are a joke, aren't they? A joker card meddling with all the other pieces in our game. I like it. You're making a pretty convincing offer. You've got courage at least, and for that I'll let you go this time.
Yuuki never did find out what Guy's mission was. All he knew was that he and his team were safe. Rain and Miziri voiced no complaints about the decision. As Guy proclaimed, Yuuki and the Jesters left the scene without further incident. Once Guy was no longer in sight, Yuuki and his group headed for the rendezvous they had arranged with Kagali's team. They assumed they were safe now, but nonetheless, everyone wanted to get out of there as soon as possible. The moment they sighted Kagali waiting for them, Laplace turned to Yuuki and spoke. Are you kidding me? I can't believe this. All those declarations you made to a living monster like Guy? Tira added. And you even made him let us all go. I thought we were done for back there. Footman said. Well, I believed in the boss from the start. Laplace retorted. You weren't thinking a damn thing the whole time. Yuuki cast Laplace a sidelong glance, then sat down on the ground, exhausted.
What do you want from me? It was the only way we might have gotten out of there alive, and it worked too, so I don't want to hear any complaints about it, okay?
The damage he suffered was far more emotional than physical. He went to lie down right there, limbs spread out, and closed his eyes, body language indicating he would tolerate no further argument. Left with nothing else to do, Laplace and Tira explained matters to the oblivious Kagali. Kagali's first reaction was abject surprise. He fought with Guy? I'm amazed you lived to tell the tale. It did not take long for her surprise to turn into sheer exasperation for Yuuki. Thought Yuuki as he felt the breeze against his cheek. It's great to be alive. Then he had another thought. That mystery voice he heard beckoning in the middle of battle. What was it? A split personality of mine or something? No, that's ridiculous, Yuuki thought. But hang on. I don't think there's some hidden power within me, although I can think of one possibility. His thoughts had taken him to a power he had obtained just recently, the unique skill Avarice. With it, he figured, the more he desired something, the greater his powers would grow. Nothing he threw at Guy in battle had any effect, including Avarice, the strongest of the sin-based skills. Yuuki thought, the skill's a total mystery, And when it comes to magic and skills, I guess you can always find something better than what you got, huh? Guy's magic overwhelmed my anti-skill. I need to figure out how that worked. Considering Yuki's sheer confidence, getting so easily defeated by Guy came as a shock. But Yuki was not about to give up. He had survived, and he needed to think up a plan for next time. His ability to turn the page like that was part of what made him such a powerful foe. He truly believed he had obtained power beyond any demon lord, that he was the strongest of all. And even if he was not, with enough research and the right strategy, he could defeat any opponent. With the backup provided by Kagali, Laplace, and many others, he had created a decent-sized force for himself. All was going well, but he had experienced nothing but failure lately, and now that day's encounter with Guy had utterly shattered his confidence. But that was, in its own way, a stroke of good luck. Yuki thought, this has gotten so exciting. And that's how a game works, right? The more difficult it is, the more impassioned you get. Yuki was not fazed one bit. Already he was deliberating with himself. Even with Initiator, Yuki could not read Guy's abilities. Given its unusual propensity for creating its own skill sets, Initiator should be easily able to analyze a target's unique skills. The opponent would have to actually use the skills for it to work, but Yuki believed that, faced with his powers, nobody would go around hiding their hand. But it had not worked on Guy, and at this point in time, that meant his opponent's skills were something beyond even unique. He wanted power, more power, enough to beat Guy with. Deep in his heart, the flames of greed roared high. Yuki thought, it must mean there's a chance I can still evolve my Avarice skill. Lord knows I'm greedier than anybody out there. If I can give it some of that greed. Reaching that conclusion filled Yuki with a nervous excitement that made him tremble. He thought about it a bit. Losing to Guy reminded him of the unfairness of the world. He wanted to resist it and emerge victorious. That was his prime desire. He closed his eyes, turning toward the voice inside him. His consciousness sank deep into the furthest recesses of his mind. The voice asked, "Willing to join hands with me now?" Yuki answered inwardly, "No, not that." The voice asked, "So why are you here?" Yuki answered, "I have an errand for you." The voice repeated, "An errand?" Yuki said inside himself, "Yep, I thought you could give me your powers." The voice snapped back, "Don't be silly." Yuki answered, "I'm not. I'm serious." The voice began to protest. What kind of stupidity is... Yuki cut it off inside his own mind. "Sorry, you're in my way." The voice had no answer but shock. The next moment, Yuki pictured his desires until there was nothing else left in his mind's eye. He all but begged for the realization of his true goals, using his powerful will as a weapon that bowed to no one. He was challenging himself to battle, and then the world language rang loud. Confirmed. Condition satisfied. The unique skill Avarice has evolved into the ultimate skill Mammon, Lord of Greed. Yuki opened his eyes, defiantly grinning. Then he spoke softly, too softly to be heard.
I'll be sure to make good use of your power.
That day, that moment, that location marked the birth of the world's most heinous magic born.
Route confirmed. The next episode and full playlist are ready.
Then don't stop here. Keep watching in story order and subscribe before the next part drops.